We're back again. The HODLing Room after a week off. Mike's
Long
been
break.
to Disney World.
Disneyland.
Disneyland,
Very,
yeah.
very different to Disney World. Rainy and cold.
So yeah, this book I've just bought, we were just on about why can't we just print more money? Bank of England, it's very mainstream, funded by whoever. I mean, it's got reviews on here on the back from the Guardian and from the Financial Times, so it's not going to be in any way anti-bank or Bitcoin adjacent at all, but could be an interesting book to see what arguments they come up with.
It's basically like being a spy.
Yeah, exactly.
Getting
Did you
inside look.
Did you watch that Elon Musk Joe Rogan recent podcast?
No, well, I didn't know he was on there again.
He was back on this week. Yeah.
Oh, was he? No,
Yeah.
I didn't. No, been out of sync with everything for a week.
It was quite interesting. There was a joke on there that he told that I thought was like it funnier than it actually was. You know how like GDP is measured, like the velocity. Like
Yeah.
it's a bit of a false measurement of the economy health because it's to do with like the transaction back and forth is how they measure it. So it's not to do with how much money is in the economy; it's how much is like spent back and forth. There was a joke that he said where he's basically criticizing that way of measuring things, and he goes, right, so there's two economists, and one economist says to the other one, he says, I will give you $100 now if you eat that pile of shit that's on the floor right there. And the other economist goes, yeah, go on then, like $100. So he eats this pile of shit. In fact, we probably got pulled from YouTube for saying that straight away, but he eats this pile of shit and he gives him $100. And then the other economist says, okay, now I'll give you back this $100 if you eat this other pile of shit. And I said, oh, yeah, go on then. So the second economist eats this pile of shit. And then the first one goes, hang on, neither of us are better off. Like we've both got the $100 that we started with, and both of us have eaten this big pile of shit. And the other economist goes, yeah, but think of the economy. That's $200 added. Like when I heard that, I was in my car, like outrageously pissing myself, like tears streaming.
That is literally true. That's the thing that's crazy.
Yeah,
That is literally what's happening with our economy right now.
It's like that's
just bananas.
He was talking about like some of the jobs which are so meaningless, because this is what he's trying to do with this whole like Doge thing, is just like cut some of these meaningless jobs. People are doing just arbitrary rubbish jobs which don't do anything, but because they have a job, it's good for the economy with the way that they measure it at the minute, but they're not bringing any value into the world. They're just eating piles of shit. Metaphor.
But I don't know. I think Elon's smarter than thinking that Doge would work. Like there is zero chance that's going to have any impact, because it's just austerity. He's just talking about austerity, really, which is like cutting down the debt and cutting down the deadwood and stuff like that. And that is literally what would collapse the current system, because money is debt. It's like such a brain. I don't want to swear. Brain fart.
Yeah,
it's not a fart.
Yeah. Well, I've already said shit about 10 times, so...
Oh, yeah, it's a brain fuck then. It's such a brain fuck that it's so weird thinking like the money that currently exists is all just created out of thin air. And
it's credit.
The debt is the money that exists. So to pay it down, there would be no money left.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
There's a really good visual on the Hidden Secrets of Money, Mike Maloney series, which is like all about gold and silver. I remember watching it years ago. And it shows like how, credit goes up, but then debt goes up quicker. So it ends up with like a tower with debt way higher than credit. And so if you pay down the debt, you also have to get rid of credit at the same time. And eventually you're left with no credit and still a pile of debt, and it would just all collapse. Yeah. And I just think that visually for me just was like, oh my God, yeah, that's bananas. That's how it's, and that's what Doge was basically trying to do, was pay down the debt which would then just collapse the whole economy. Like it just cannot work with the current monetary system. But yeah, it's the same question that got me into it all in the first place, was like, how can every country in the world be in debt? I was looking at football teams at the time. I was like, how is every football team in debt? Like, how does that make any sense? I was looking at Man U's like balance sheet, and I was like, this makes no sense. Like, how can they be the richest club, or one of the richest clubs in the world, but have this much debt? And it was just digging that rabbit hole, which led me to all of this stuff. And then I was like, the more I was learning, the more I was like, this is terrible. Like, it's basically like, it's just the same as me and you going into an insane amount of credit card debt, and then just being like, print more money. Like, it's fine. Like, I can do that as many times. It's like defaulting, but countries just never default. Like, they just keep printing more and basically just giving themselves money. It's the exact equivalent of me and you going and spending everything on credit card and then being like, oh, we've run out now. Like, we have no more money. I know. Let me just go into my basement and print. Yeah, I'm just going to draw the Queen's face on the banknote and like go and print loads more money. It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, something that didn't make sense to me. Well, no, something that didn't make sense to me when I was young was like, so who are they in debt to? Like, you have to be in debt to somebody, surely. Like, you've got that money from somewhere.
Exactly.
So how is a country in debt? Like, isn't the country like the head of isn't the government the top? Like, how is a government?
Surely one country must be owed loads of money then.
Yeah,
but they're just not. They're all in debt. It's bananas.
Yeah, complete backwards.
It's silly. It's silly. Well, but yeah, it seems to make sense. So it'll be interesting what they say in that book to see like the current logic and reasoning for it.
Yeah. Now we are back on the Bitcoin standard. Over halfway through now. We're on the chapter Sound Money and Individual Freedom. Let me just get this one up.
We've got to be close to digital money now, haven't we?
I think this is the last subheading before digital money, yeah. We're on the bezel.
Oh, nice.
Which I assume is embezzling funds or something like that. Right. Should we crack on with the book?
Bezel. Yeah, let's go.
See what the bezel is on about.
Shall I start?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So the bezel, chapter 3, explained how any commodity acquiring a monetary role would incentivize people to produce more of that commodity. And money which can be easily produced will lead to more economic resources and human time being dedicated toward its production. And money is acquired not for its own properties, but to be exchanged for other goods and services. Its purchasing power is important, not its absolute quantity. There is therefore no societal benefit from any activity which increases the supply of money. This is why in a free market, whatever assumes a monetary role will have a reliably high stock-to-flow ratio. The new supply of the money is small compared to the overall existing supply. This ensures that the least possible amount of society's labour and capital resources is dedicated toward producing more monetary media and is instead dedicated toward the production of useful goods and services whose absolute quantity, unlike that of money, matters. Gold became the leading global monetary standard because its new production was always a reliably tiny percentage of its existing supply, making gold mining a highly uncertain and unprofitable business, thus forcing more and more of the world's capital and labour to be directed toward the production of non-monetary goods. And that's exactly like what you were saying, Elon was saying about Doge, basically. There's so many people pushing papers around, not actually doing anything productive because the government just provides pointless jobs.
Yeah.
And you can also, I would also argue, anyone working on Wall Street, anyone working trading or doing foreign exchange, all of those jobs are just paper pushers and providing no real value.
Yeah, that's
trading
right.
does not provide any real value to the world.
No.
It just puts money in your own pocket or whoever you're trading for.
Yeah, well, they're just making money from money. They're not actually creating value. They're just profiting from the medium of exchange itself.
Exactly. I mean, I remember really looking into trading a few years ago, and I was seriously considering, like, because I'm quite weird with those sort of things, and I like spreadsheets and I like that sort of stuff. And I was like, it is weird. But I was like, I know I could be strict enough to stick to a certain thing, whereas I know most people can't, sort of thing. Just stick to your rules, cut when you need to, and things like that. And then I just, the more I was looking into it, the more I realized exactly this. I was like, I'm literally not going to be providing any value doing this. It's kind of like, well, why don't I just figure out ways to provide value and then just use my money and save rather than invest? Save in Bitcoin rather than investing in diversified portfolio and shuffling money around and spending all my time doing that sort of thing.
Was it in this book where we might have already gone into it, where people have to do all of that trading stuff because the money itself is so flawed that instead of just being able to save, you have to do these kind of high risk investments. You have to buy a stock and a share and blah, 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 because having a savings account is just going to be, eroded by inflation. So people are forced to do this kind of stuff just to preserve wealth. You know, whereas if we had more of a you don't have to do that with something like Bitcoin, because it's not like a melting ice cube where the purchasing power just decreases all the time because more is being printed more and more. So that whole thing is just it's a byproduct of the flaw in the currency itself. I was chatting to a mate of mine in the week, and he's like, he likes gold because it's got the history, and he likes the fact that he can touch it and hold it and that kind of thing. And I've been trying to talk to him about Bitcoin for a while. He's more receptive now than ever, and I actually had a sit down chat with him. And he was like, he showed me his stock portfolio, and I explained about purchasing power of the pound. And he's like, look, over the last 2 years, my portfolios, it's gone up 90%. Like, look at that. And I was like, yeah, but it's gone up 90% when you're measuring it against the pound. But the purchasing power of the pound goes down. So it's like the number's gone up 90%, but the actual value would have decreased as well. Like, if you were to measure that against gold or measure it against Bitcoin, it's probably gone down. I think that actually clicked with him, because I said, look at the S&P 500 when measured in pounds or dollars. Oh, wow, great. It's higher than ever. But when measured against gold or Bitcoin, it's actually gone down. And the value of the pound itself has gone down as well. So and I was going into this kind of having a standardized unit of measure, unit of account. And I was talking about a kilogram is a kilogram, a centimeter is a centimeter, but the pound is a weird one because it's not actually a pound. Like a pound now, you buy less, it's got less value than a pound 20 years ago. So it's a bad unit of account, So don't be deceived by just the number, because there's an underlying issue with that whole thing in itself. And I think it clicked with him. So it's a work in progress trying to orange pill this guy, but he's getting there.
It's the same with altcoins. Anyone that invests in altcoins, they do the exact same thing. They're often like, oh yeah, say if you started in late 2022 or something, a lot of people will be like, I've made 3x or whatever. I started with 10 grand, now I've got 30 grand. Like, I'm so good at doing this altcoin stuff. It's like, that's great, but what about if you had just put that into Bitcoin? You'd have an 8x now. You'd have 80 grand, and you wouldn't have had to spend any time looking at these scam altcoins, which or random meme coins, and seeing what's the current hype and all of that, and going in and out of stuff and paying tax on all of the stuff that you've had to do. and to be honest, most people as well will actually be down. Like you only hear from the people that are shouting loud about it, about being 3x up or whatever. Whereas the vast majority of people will have just lost money by spending all that time.
Everyone I know that's attempted trading has just been absolutely wrecked.
Yeah. Anyone
come out with
using
nothing.
Leverage.
Yeah.
I think so this is what I mean. Like, I was really looking into it. It's something like you should only ever, any position that you ever put on should only be a maximum of 2% of your overall portfolio or something. And you should only risk 2%. So it's not even putting on 2%. So if you're using leverage, it might only be like 0.5% or something like that.
Okay.
And then the idea is then that you win your trades more than, like, if you're doing more than 50%, then you should be profitable, sort of thing. And you have stop losses in the right place and all that sort of stuff. But it's just boring. It's not that fun. And like I say, anyone that does try trading will lose money for a long period of time because they won't manage the risk properly. They won't actually do that. They will never stick to that.
Well, it's like you said,
you get confident and then you put 10% on or something and it just wrecks you. Like the whole account is blown up. So,
well, it turns into a full-time job then, because you've got to watch the charts all day. Like that becomes your 9 to 5. It's like, and as you were saying, am I bringing any value into the world there by just sitting and watching a chart all day? Not really. It's not. That's a side that I'm not really interested in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think anyone sticks with it for more than a few years, and then the ones that do stick with it are the ones that do manage risk and can do the boring things consistently over a long period of time, really. But even then, they're probably measuring against the dollar or the pound and not against Bitcoin. And if they were measuring against Bitcoin, it's like, would you be outperforming it over the last 10 years? Probably not. If you just stuck it in Bitcoin and done nothing else, then there's very little chance. Anyway, to go back to it. For John Maynard Keynes and Milton Friedman, one of the main attractions of moving away from the gold standard was the reduction in the costs of gold mining that would ensue from switching to government-issued paper money, whose cost of production is far lower than that of gold. They not only misunderstood that gold has very few resources going to its production compared to other goods whose supply can be inflated far more easily, they also severely underestimated the real cost to society from a form of money whose supply can be expanded at the will of a government susceptible to democratic and special interest politics. The real cost is not in the direct cost of running the printing presses, but from all the economic activity foregone as productive resources chase after the new government-issued money rather than engage in economic production. And that's exactly the same with traders as well.
Well, this reminds me of something that Antonopoulos said once, because he was going into like people criticizing the amount of energy that it takes to uphold the Bitcoin network. And, you know, he said, well, what price could you possibly put on like a sound money that the entire society is going to be based on? You know, surely that is worth putting energy into, because if not, and if you think, well, we'll put that energy into something else. And if you've got a dodgy currency, as it says here, eventually the cracks will show. And this is what we're seeing now. The cracks starting to show.
Yeah, I mean, you can run the numbers on it, and it's something like it's more than 2 times the amount of energy is spent on the measurable stuff from printing money or like managing the economy, you know, like the Federal Reserve and like the buildings and the infrastructure. Like you can, I did that on one of the videos before, but you're not measuring everything. And also a lot of people will then say, oh, what? And Bitcoin's only $2 trillion, whereas the global economy is more like 1 quadrillion or something. So surely Bitcoin's going to be way more energy expensive. But exactly like you say, is that you're not asking the right question. What should the energy cost be to allow everyone to only focus on creating value for the world? Like if all 8 billion of us had sufficient had a roof over our head, knew that we could eat next week because we have like savings and stuff that are not going to be eroded away. We've spoke about it so many times, with like art and artists and things in the past. If you've got like 10 years worth of savings, it gives you that breathing space to go and create real value or real art and stuff. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you are worried about putting food on the table next week and you're in heaps of credit card debt and you've got debt piling up on top of debt, you can't be thinking about, I'm just going to take a couple of years out and
write a book.
Right, or like whatever it is that interests. Like everyone has their own things that interest them, and that's the thing. Whereas if you have sound money, like you say, what should the cost of that be?
Yeah,
especially when you actually really dig into it and see that the energy, the energy infrastructure and stuff built around Bitcoin is actually providing renewable energy. Like it's literally subsidizing it and providing like that floor price where people can be confident to go and build a solar farm in the middle of Africa with no resources around, and it's not going to that little town around them is never going to use the amount of energy they produce. But when you've got a Bitcoin mining company that is guaranteeing them money, then it's like, it's worth doing this all of a sudden. Whereas it's never been worth that up until now. So
it incentivizes more cheap and economical energy production. So in the long run, it's going to be way better.
It's game theory because it only makes sense to go after the cheapest energy. You can't just you can't just buy a miner and stick it on our house in the UK unless you have solar panels or some sort of renewable energy yourself, because it makes financially zero sense. You're just going to you may as well just buy Bitcoin. Like there's no point in mining it with these rates. So they go and seek the cheapest energy, which is renewable and often in remote areas, like West Texas and Africa and tons of places. I think they're using like volcanic energy in certain parts of the world. But which bit were we up to? Inflationary credit. Inflationary credit creation can be understood as a society-wide example of what economist John Kenneth Galbraith called the bezel in his book on the Great Depression. And that's what the bezel is then. As credit expansion in the 1920s soared, corporations were awash with money, and it was very easy for people to embezzle that money in various ways. For as long as the credit keeps flowing, the victims are oblivious, and an illusion of increased wealth is created across society as both the victim and the robber think they have the money. Credit creation by central banks causes unsustainable booms by allowing the financing of unprofitable projects and allowing them to continue consuming resources on unproductive activities. In a sound monetary system, any business that survives does so by offering value to society by receiving a higher revenue for its products than the costs it incurs for its inputs. The business is productive because it transforms inputs of a certain market price into outputs with a higher market price. Any firm that produces outputs valued at less than its inputs would go out of business. Its resources freed up to be used by other, more productive firms in what economist Joseph Schumpeter termed creative destruction. There can be no profit in a free market without the real risk of loss, and everyone is forced to have skin in the game. Failure is always a real possibility and can be costly. Government-issued unsound money, however, can stall this process, keeping unproductive firms undead but not truly alive, the economic equivalent of zombies or vampires drawing on the resources of the alive and productive firms to produce things of less value than the resources needed to make them. It creates a new societal caste that exists according to rules different from those of everyone else, with no skin in the game. Facing no market test for their work, they are insulated from consequences to their actions. This new, is it caste or caste?
I think it's caste.
This new caste exists in every economic sector supported by government money.
This is bank bailouts. And there's no bailouts in a sound money system.
Yeah, and it's something that talk about a lot in my videos, and I sometimes wonder whether people understand, but it's kind of like one of those things where I'm always trying to strip it down as much as possible so it doesn't make the video go on too long. And if every time I say that a zombie company and then have to explain what he's just explained there, it just makes it too long. But I think it's so important for people to understand this, that there are so many zombie companies which literally are just sucking on the free, cheap money that is being created out of thin air and producing no real value. Whereas all little small businesses don't have access to this capital and this cheap free money that is being printed. So the small businesses and, you know, like little one-man bands like your plumbers and electricians and things like that locally, they just get squeezed by this. Like they do not profit from it. But if you're in that like S&P 500, I think everyone knows there's only really 7 companies that are actually contributing to that price, that number go up in the S&P 500 now. You know, your big, was it the Magnificent Seven, like Google, Amazon, Meta, like all of those ones. Everyone else within that is basically, well, not everyone, but like the vast majority of those, the other 493 are very similar to these vampire companies who get access to borrowing money. It's what Michael Saylor's doing with strategy. He was a vampire company and he has access to money and capital and being able to like get loans and debt. And he just realized, why don't I just put this crappy money into the most sound money there's ever existed?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden he's created a thriving business sort of thing. So that's why there's been all these copycats this summer and everything. And it's all gone mad, and they're probably going to be, then most of them are going to end up contributing to the next crash because they probably don't understand Bitcoin and will sell when it goes down 50% or whatever. But wow, I've lost where I am again. It is not possible.
Yeah.
It is not possible to estimate with any degree of accuracy what percentage of the economic activity in the modern world economy goes toward pursuing government printed money rather than the production of goods and services useful to society. But it is possible to get an idea by looking at which firms and sectors survive because of succeeding in the test of the free market, and which are only alive thanks to government largesse, be it fiscal or monetary. Fiscal support is the more straightforward of zombie creation methods to detect. Any firms that receive direct government support, and the vast majority of firms that are alive thanks to selling their products to the public sector, are effectively zombies. Had these firms been productive to society, free individuals would have willingly parted with their money to pay for their products. That they cannot survive on voluntary payments shows that these firms are a burden and not a productive asset for society. But the more pernicious method of creating zombies is not through direct government payments, but through access to low interest rate credit. As fiat money has slowly eroded society's ability to save, capital investments no longer come from savers' savings, but from government-created debt, which devalues existing money holdings. In a society with sound money, the more a person saves, the more he is able to accumulate capital and the more he can invest, meaning that capital owners tend to be those with lower time preference. But when capital comes from government credit creation, the allocators of capital are no longer the future-oriented, but members of various bureaucratic agencies. In a free market with sound money, capital owners choose to allocate their capital to the investments they find most productive and can utilize investment banks to manage this allocation process. The process rewards firms that serve customers successfully, and the investors who identify them will, while punishing mistakes. In a fiat monetary system, however, the central bank is de facto responsible for the entirety of the credit allocation process. It controls and supervises the bank that allocate capital, sets the lending eligibility criteria, and attempts to quantify risks in a mathematical manner that ignores how real-world risks work. The test of the free market is suspended as central bank direction of credit can overrule the economic reality of profit and loss. In the world of fiat money, having access to the central bank's monetary spigots is more important than serving customers. Firms that can get low interest rate credit to operate will have a persistent advantage over competitors that cannot. The criteria for success in the market becomes more and more related to being able to secure funding at lower interest rates than to providing services to society. That's kind of what I was just saying.
Yeah.
Like Saylor could get access to cheap money. Like he gets billions of dollars of loans at 0% interest.
That's crazy.
Like that is something that a plumber down the road cannot do.
Exactly, yeah.
That is not possible. He's using his position in like one of those big companies to be able to do it, sort of thing. And I guess they're not S&P 500 as well, so you don't have to be S&P 500 to do it. This simple phenomenon explains much of the modern economic reality, such as the large number of industries that make money but produce nothing of value to anyone. Government agencies are the prime example, and the global notoriety that they have earned for their employees' incompetence can only be understood as a function of the bezel funding that finances them being completely detached from economic reality. Instead of the hard test of market success by serving citizens, government agencies test themselves and invariably conclude the answer to all their failings lies in more funding. Just so silly. No matter the level of incompetence, negligence, or failure, government agencies and employers rarely ever face real consequences. Even after the rationale for a government agency's existence has been removed, the agency will continue operating and find itself more duties and responsibility. Lebanon, for instance, continues to have a train authority decades after its trains were decommissioned and the tracks rusted into irrelevance. What? Why do they have a train authority if they don't even have trains?
Yeah, I mean...
In a globalized world, the bezel is not restricted to national governmental organizations, but has grown to include international governmental organizations, a globally renowned drain of time and effort of no conceivable benefit to anyone but those employed in them. What Elon Musk is saying as well. Being located away from the taxpayers that fund them, these organizations face even less scrutiny than national governmental organizations, and as such function with less accountability and more relaxed approach towards budgets, deadlines, and work. Yeah, talking about budgets, I've noticed that in the school I was working in the Middle East, you get like a budget for like each department. So like our PE department, I remember it would always get towards the end of the year, and the head of PE would just be like, "Guys, we've got to spend
some money,
go and look in like all the cupboards, find stuff that we need to spend another like £10,000 by the end of next week, and if we don't, it means our budget gets cut next year." It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, so us spending more cuts the budget because you don't need as much money. So you have to. You're incentivized, and I imagine this happens in all areas of work and things. Whereas if you use your budget or go slightly over, they'll increase the budget that you get for the next year because you need that budget. It's like, but it's just total phoniness. It's like, we don't need anything else. Like we've got everything we need. But then when you do need it next year or
there's no budget.
2 years time, you've run out of the budget because you used it for that year or whatever. It's like, it's just so crazy how things work. Academia is another good example where students pay ever more exorbitant fees to enter universities only to be taught by professors who spend very little time and effort on the teaching and mentoring of students, focusing most of their time on publishing unreadable research to get government grants and climb the corporate academic ladder. In a free market, academics would have to contribute value by teaching or writing things people actually read and benefit from. Man, I can only say that is so true. That is 100% true. but the average academic paper is rarely ever read by anyone except the small circle of academics in each discipline who approve each other's grants and enforce the standards of groupthink and politically motivated conclusions masquerading as academic rigor.
This is coming from a professor as well. This is coming from a professor of economics.
It's so true. It is bananas, like, when you think of it. It's like when one of my friends said as well, was like, why don't you get like a academically approved thing about the financial system, and then I'll kind of like listen to you. It's like, this is why
exactly.
I do not trust academically approved research.
Because
and also it doesn't make any sense. It's just write gobbledygook. It's like reading something from a solicitor. It's like, it doesn't make any sense. I have to put it through AI and ask it to explain it to me like I'm a 10-year-old, because I don't understand what you're saying. You're just using stupid words that are not needed.
I mean, a lot of these academic papers as well, these people don't get the funding to do the research unless they get the funding from somebody that wants a specific answer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a bank isn't going to...
you've got to create the answer.
Exactly. Like the bank isn't going to fund a paper that says that banks are not needed. They're gonna fund some papers that say quantitative easing is the best way. Do you know what I mean? The same is
so
all
even as
all
like
fields.
A very small example here. I did for my dissertation at uni, I did sports science, and I did it on the glycemic index, basically looking at how what you eat before exercise can affect your performance. So if you're eating like high sugary foods, typically what happens is your blood glucose spikes and then you have a big drop off, and then it can... So if you're doing something like a marathon, some people think, it's great to eat like a bag of Haribo or something before you do it, but what will happen is your blood glucose spikes, and then for most of the marathon it'll be lower than where it was. Whereas if you had something like porridge or something with a lower glycemic index, it would be a slow increase in your blood sugar, and then it would slowly come back down. So that's what I was trying to show. And we basically used we did not do a good job. We used like apples and bananas, which were very similar, rather than something like a bag of Haribo and porridge, which would have been way better. And rather than just sort of like saying that, we were sort of like encouraged to say, oh no, that is the truth. This is what happens with glycemic index. So don't really report your findings. Just sort of, they were trying to like make us fit it to what the hypothesis was.
This is what it says here: enforce the standards of groupthink.
It's like, because we know this is fact. It was like, well, yeah, but why don't we just say like we chose bad things, and this is how we would do it again? Then we should really just scrap the whole thing and do it again. Like, that's really what should have been done in the situation. But it's like, that's only from one very small thing. And this is like our professors like telling, or whatever they're called, telling us what we should do. The most popular and influential economics textbook in the post-war period was written by Nobel laureate Paul Samuelson. We saw in chapter 4 how Samuelson predicted that ending World War II would cause the biggest recession in world history, only for one of the biggest booms in US history to ensue. But it gets better. Samuelson wrote the most popular economics textbook of the post-war era, Economics and Introductory Analysis, which has sold millions of copies over 6 decades. Levy and Pert studied the different versions of Samuelson's textbook to find him repeatedly presenting the Soviet economic model as being more conducive to economic growth, predicting in the 4th edition in the 1961 that the Soviet Union's economy would overtake that of the United States sometime between 84 and 97. These forecasts for Soviets overtaking the United States continue to be made with increasing confidence throughout 7 editions of the textbook, until the 11th edition in 1980, with varying estimates for when the overtaking would occur. In the 13th edition, published in 89, which hit the desks of university students as the Soviet Union was beginning to unravel, Samuelson and his then co-author William Nordhaus wrote, "The Soviet economy is proof that, contrary to what many skeptics had earlier believed, a socialist command economy can function and even thrive." Nor was this confined to one textbook, as Levy and Pert show that such insights were common in many editions of what is probably the second most popular economics textbook, McConnell's Economics, Principles, Problems and Policies, as well as several other textbooks. Any student who learned economics in the post-war period in a university followed an American curriculum. The majority of the world's students learns that the Soviet model is a more efficient way of organizing economic activity. Even after the collapse and utter failure of the Soviet Union, the same textbooks continue to be taught in the same universities, with the newer editions removing the grandiose proclamations that Soviet success without questioning the rest of their economic worldview and methodological tools. How is it that such patently failed textbooks continue to be taught, and how is the Keynesian worldview so brutally assaulted beyond repair by reality over the past 7 decades? From the boom after World War II to the stagflation of the 70s to the collapse of the Soviet Union, still taught in universities. The dean of today's Keynesian economists, Paul Krugman, has even written of how an alien invasion would be great for the economy as it would force government to spend and mobilize resources.
That's the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard. Yeah.
That's like the joke you said at the start about why don't you just go and eat some shit, because that's
literally, because it's good for the economy.
That's going to help. Why don't we just have an alien invasion? That'd be great. It's like what they say about war as well. War's great for the economy.
Well, exactly.
No, it's not.
Exactly.
No, it's not.
Well, it is, because it is for them, because they get to print more money and spend more and do all that other stuff. So when you look at it through their worldview, it is good because they're only looking at this one number.
Exactly.
But it's not good for everybody else.
Well, also, it fails to see that by putting human lives, like solely focused on killing other human lives, those human lives could be there doing something valuable to society and actually providing value somehow in whatever form it is. I feel like that's the biggest thing that they miss, is that by all of these crappy jobs and crappy things that people do, you're actually, it's like the what is it, like the cost of not actually doing it, sort of thing.
Well, in a free market, surely there'll be no need for economists at all.
No, well, there isn't.
Or,
there is no need.
Any of this
foreign exchange brokers, that is completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
You think of how many of those, every time that you go on holiday somewhere and you have to go somewhere and get some cash out, that is a total waste of time.
Yeah.
For everyone that's involved in that process.
I mean,
and that's just one little example.
Yeah.
Craziness. In a free market economic system, no self-respecting university would want to teach its students things that are so patently wrong and absurd, as it strives to arm its students with the most useful knowledge. But in an academic system completely corrupted by government money, the curriculum is not determined through its accordance with reality, but through its accordance with the political agenda of the governments funding it. And governments universally love Keynesian economics today for the same reason they loved it in the 1930s. It offers them the sophistry and justification for acquiring ever more power and money. I was listening to that, what's his name? The podcast we were chatting about the other day?
Simon Dixon.
That's it. Yeah, I was listening to the second part of that Dixon, again.
Yeah.
No, it was he did a new one on What is Money with Robert Breedlove.
Yes, I've not seen that one yet.
The point that he's making is that I think, as both me and you know, but the vast majority of people do not know, is that governments are basically puppets, and the people that are running the show are like the big banks,
corporations,
and stuff, like BlackRock, and they are the ones that love Keynesian economics. So it's not necessarily always the governments; they just get in their pocket. And so anyone that tries to go outside of what they should be doing So it's like you've almost really seen it with Trump already, just in this term. Like he came in very strong as like, this is what he's going to do. And, with the whole Doge thing, and then completely done a U-turn sort of thing. And it's like, well, why is this?
Yeah.
And he's basically he's now doing the great, beautiful bill or whatever it is. It's like the exact opposite of what he said just a few months. Well, it's like a year ago that he came in term. So, and why do you think that is? It's probably because he will get killed, or like, he's working with the mafia basically. What Simon Dixon says.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dixon says that he's just working for these big corporations, and that's as Dixon says, presidents are selected, not elected. So they get in however they want, but then they actually do what they're told to. And this is why we get so many narratives with things as well, because the public has to be fed a certain narrative to justify and believe why they're doing a certain thing. Do you know what I mean? Because we don't get told the full story, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. All these narratives. This discussion can continue to include many other fields and disciplines in modern academia where the same pattern repeats. Funding coming from government agencies is monopolized by groups of like-minded scholars sharing fundamental biases. You do not get a job or funding in the system by producing important scholarship that is productive and useful to the real world, but by furthering the agenda of the funders.
That's exactly it.
Yeah. That the funding comes from one source only eliminates the possibility for a free marketplace of ideas. Academic debates concern ever more arcane minutiae, and all parties in these fraternal disputes can always agree that both parties need more funding to continue these important disagreements. The debates of academia are almost entirely irrelevant to the real world, and its articles are almost never read by anyone except the people who write them for job promotion purposes. But the government bezel indefinitely rolls on because there is no mechanism by which government funding can ever be reduced when it does not benefit anybody.
I was reading this thing once, and it was to do with like the pharmaceutical industry and all of the studies that they fund. And I can't remember the statistic exactly, but it was something like there was 20 studies done of this, is this certain drug toxic, or is this certain, food toxic? And if, say they do 20 studies, if one of these studies suggests that it's not toxic, then they'll just cherry pick that one and publish that one. The other 19 that said it was, they just won't get published. They just won't even focus on, they'll just bury those 19. So there's a certain agenda that they want by these studies, and they'll just pick those. They won't tell people, oh, by the way, we did 20 studies and we only picked this one, but this is the only one that we're gonna publicly, focus on. And then obviously everybody in the public goes, look, here we go. It's got this scientific study. It says this. It's like, yeah, but you're not getting the full story there. It's so biased to whoever, has the money, whoever funds these things.
Yeah.
And the same can be said for probably any industry, any area.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Especially like food. I've done a lot of research into food and health and that sort of stuff. And it's exactly the same. Like the stuff that we should be getting taught is filtered out and not accessible to the public. Whereas the cherry picked one or two that fit their narrative and bias are like everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Where are we up to? Anybody? In a society with sound money, banking is a very important and productive job where bankers perform two highly pivotal functions for economic prosperity: the safekeeping of assets as deposits and the matching of maturity and risk tolerance between investors and investment opportunities. Bankers make their money by taking a cut from the profits if they succeed in their job, but make no profit if they fail. Only the successful bankers and banks stay in their job, as those that fail are weeded out. In a society of sound money, there are no liquidity concerns over the failure of a bank, as all banks hold all their deposits on hand and have investments of matched maturity. In other words, there is no distinction between illiquidity and insolvency, and there is no systemic risk that could make any bank too big to fail. A bank that fails is the problem of its shareholders and lenders and nobody else. Unsound money allows the possibility of mismatching maturity, of which fractional reserve banking is but a subset, and this leaves banks always liable to a liquidity crisis or a bank run. Maturity, mismatching, or fractional reserve banking, as a special case of it, is always liable to a liquidity crisis if lenders and depositors were to demand their deposits at the same time. The only way to make maturity mismatching safe is with the presence of a lender of last resort standing ready to lend to banks in case of a bank run. In a society with sound money, a central bank would have to tax everyone not involved in the bank in order to bail out the bank. In a society with unsound money, the central bank is simply able to create new money supply and use it to support the bank's liquidity. Unsound money thus creates a distinction between liquidity and solvency. A bank could be solvent in terms of the net present value of its assets, but face a liquidity problem that prevents it from meeting its financial obligations with a certain period of time. But the lack of liquidity itself could trigger a bank run as depositors and lenders seek liquidity itself and seek to get their deposits out of the bank. Worse, the lack of liquidity in one bank could lead to a lack of liquidity in other banks dealing with this bank, creating systemic risk problems. If the central bank credibly commits to providing liquidity in such cases, however, there will be no fear of a liquidity crisis, which in turn averts the scenario of a bank run and leaves the banking system safe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, this is just reminds me of 2008. The bank bailouts. I was chatting to another mate during the week as well, who's just getting into Bitcoin as well, and I was telling him about the whole Genesis block and the newspaper article that was engraved into the Genesis block, and how Bitcoin is literally a solution to that. Is you cannot just print more if you're doing dodgy dealings with Bitcoin. You can't just be bailed out by a central point. You can't just print more Bitcoin. And the whole I guess, concept of Bitcoin from its foundation was a solution to this problem. We've seen it happen. 2008. Banks were doing dodgy stuff. They should have failed. They got bailed out. And also, as Simon Dixon says, the losses are socialized and the profits were, what does he say? The profits were privatized and the losses were socialized, so we got screwed over at their mistake, which is bullshit.
Even the losses were privately profiting them at the same time. During the financial crisis, bankers walked out with massive bonuses that year. It was just, it's bananas. It was not even like they were affected. So the socializing of the losses wasn't just didn't even apply to them. That's the crazy part.
No,
it was just applied to everyone else.
Everybody,
and they still profited.
Yeah, exactly.
The actual people running the banks and everything, which is just bananas. Something a friend sent me the other day was how it was just like some girl on Instagram or something saying, don't you think it's suspicious that Bitcoin started after the banking financial crisis and now they're sort of getting us into, I think the point she was making is Bitcoin is normalizing CBDCs and things that will be coming out. And it's it's just amazing. What she said actually kind of half made sense. If you were, it was logical what she said.
Yeah. Well, I thought,
and I was like, oh my God, it's going to be so easy for people to catch on to this as Bitcoin's the bad guy. Bitcoin is was created by the CIA. You've heard that before and stuff. It's created by the government or the CIA or something. Whereas it's like, oh, you just haven't dug it enough.
No.
Like,
Well,
you're actually quite logical and making sense in some ways, but Bitcoin is actually the solution to it. It's
exactly.
like it's the total opposite.
I had exactly the same thought for years, actually. Because I was wary of any kind of digital currency.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, Bitcoin is just digital currency, so why would I touch that? Because I would just stick with cash in hand, and silver. And I was looking towards silver. I mean, during lockdown, when they started printing money and shutting everything down and just giving people free money, I thought, right, this is going to be it. You can't just do that. Everything's going to collapse. And I put my savings into silver, because at that point I thought Bitcoin was just like any other digital currency. You need to avoid it like the plague. But yeah, as you said, it's completely different to a CBDC. A CBDC is like the fiat system on crack. It's the same system, it's the same currency, but just completely trackable, completely traceable, completely censorable, and still issued by them, the central point. Whereas Bitcoin is complete opposite: decentralized, uncensorable, finite.
And this is
the solution to that.
something else I realized, with the whole digital ID
the digital
stuff.
aspect is a good thing as well, like in Bitcoin's case, because if you were to just
isn't it?
But also if you were to just like be like, all right, forget this, I'm going to go and move to Australia, you're not going to carry a suitcase of gold bullion with you, but you could literally just have your seed phrase memorized in your head, and you got access to all of your funds. And if you do it properly, you'd be like, I've never even heard of Bitcoin. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It's but it does make sense. Like, I can see why people would think it. That's the thing.
Oh, definitely. I thought
say,
it, yeah.
she actually it sounded smart as well what she said. I was like, oh man. But yeah, the other thing that I noticed with the like the whole digital ID thing in the UK, is that still happening, by the way? Like, I haven't really been following it since then.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it's just
still going
ahead.
ahead.
A date or anything.
No, but I think I have heard that certain industries and certain jobs are already beginning to require it. So it's going to be probably like the whole COVID, the whole Vax Pass, where they were like, okay, well, the NHS is going to start there first, and then they'll start with one area and then just expand it out, and that kind of thing. But as far as I know, it's still going ahead. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I remember we've got like a little crypto group from years ago of like close friends. There's probably about 10 of us in there. And I remember like years ago, just sort of kept sort of like subtly dropping Bitcoin, being like, it's different, like look into it a bit more. And just sort of saying to people like, here's a book that I found was really easy to read, or here's a podcast or whatever. It's just dropping things in about it over the years. And now I've become full on like crazy guy. Like, and people just think I'm full on mental, I think now, because I'm like, look, this is getting so serious now.
Yeah.
Like, look, just how can you not see these digital IDs as being serious? Like, I don't understand how people can not see it. Like, but
well,
I was speaking to a friend like the other weekend in person, and he was saying, you do realize everyone sees you as crazy now? I was like, yeah, I know, but it's getting to the point where if I don't say this and all this stuff actually happens, I'll feel terrible, because it's just like, it's more like I want to try and help people, but I've been sort of leading the horse to water for years, and no one's drinking. And so it's getting to the stage where I don't know what else to do other than just be like the crazy guy that, with stuff. I'm just being so matter of fact about it. But he was like, yeah, but what's even wrong with these digital IDs? Like, and he was sort of telling me about it. It was like, as long as you just do what you're supposed to do, like, not breaking any laws or anything. I was like, yeah, but you could do that your whole life, and then for no reason, like, you could park on a double yellow line, and they could
the fine will be taken
access to your bank.
Yeah, or the fine will just be taken straight away.
Instantly taken. You could just. It's like you could be good, but like, and it happens to tons of people who have just wrote a tweet slightly out of line and end up in prison or whatever it is, and it's like. And he's like, yeah, but you just don't do that. Like, it's like, you don't know what is going to be cracked down on. They might look at your history for whatever reason and find something on Facebook that you did in 2007, where, you know, when you like at uni or someone's, I remember we used to call it like frape. It was frape, Facebook rape. Like people used to get your phone or whatever, or on your laptop and then write stupid things on there, which wasn't even you. And it's like, they could do that. And then that's it. Your access to the bank account is gone or whatever it is. And
you don't know what,
you've got no idea what the future is going to bring, sort of thing. It's like,
you don't know what group of people a certain regime is going to persecute. Like he was just mentioning Soviet Russia, you know, and they decided, they were like, okay, well, if you're religious, if you're Christian, we're just going to exterminate you because this current regime, we don't want that. And they just, you know, exterminated them. You know, so that was just like,
it's been found that the Pope is like a paedophile or something, so all Christians must go to jail. You know, like
it could be whatever they want. But I did notice that I've got a mate of mine that does NatWest banking, and his NatWest have now started to track carbon usage with your purchases. Have you seen this or heard this?
No way.
So they basically track through your purchases. They're actually doing this. He showed me on his bank statement that with your purchases, whether it be petrol or steak or whatever, your carbon footprint is now being tracked. They're not doing anything about it at the minute, but they're just showing you, you know, this is your thing. So it could be, okay, if it goes fully digital, fully CBDC, you've got a certain amount of carbon credits, which they say, okay, so if you want to buy
any more steak this month,
if you want to buy a steak this month, then we're gonna have to tax you because you've gone over your card simply just won't work. Or okay, you've said something dodgy on Facebook, so you're not actually allowed to travel outside of your city. Therefore, your card just doesn't work outside of your city walls, and it's a form of like, it's just more control, more tax, that kind of thing. And they can do it however they want. And yeah, you're going to get some people that are just like, I don't care, I've got nothing to hide. But it's like, well, it's not about that, you know.
Well, this is also what I actually said to him as well, is that it's happened to me firsthand. Like, I actually couldn't get on the plane to come back to the UK during COVID until I had a jab. So it was like, so what? I'm just not allowed to see my family now unless I inject something that is totally unknown to me or to anyone, totally unproven, into my body. I have to do this if I want to go and see my. And it was like, how long is this going to go on for? Like, you know, and so it's got. And also, you couldn't go and work in a school because you'd be spreading COVID. Like, what? Even
though you get,
I've had it before, and I'm probably more immune than anyone. Like, you know, it was mental. The work. It was just like, how is this acceptable that this is happening? And that was just one. Again, it's just one small example that has actually happened to me. I had to
small use case,
despite not wanting to. You know, like what else was I going to do? Just stay in Qatar by myself and my family go back. You know, it was just I don't know. It was crazy. It really was.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tool that can be used however they want to use it, and you know, they'll just spin any narrative they want in order for you to jump through a hoop. That's it. Just gives them the power to do that, which is the issue.
People don't see it. Like, they do not see it. They don't even see that as an issue in having a digital ID, to the extent that they wouldn't even sign the petition. It's like, oh man, is the world getting this lot? And these are not like stupid people. These are like, you know, and these are sort of close friends that you think you'd be able to like have frank conversations with and not being made to seem like crazy, but apparently all logic is going out the window.
That's how it is, isn't it?
Where were we anyway?
Fractional reserve banking, I think. Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Fractional reserve banking or maturity mismatching more generally is likely to continue to cause financial crisis without a central bank using an elastic money supply to bail out these banks. But the presence of a central bank able to bail out the banks creates a major problem of moral hazard for these banks. That was a lot of banks.
Yeah.
They can now take excessive risks without knowing that the central bank will be inclined to bail them out to avert a systemic crisis. From this, we see how banking has evolved into a business that generates returns without risks to bankers and simultaneously creates risks without returns for everyone else. As you say, Simon Dixon, what was the phrase again?
Privatizing the gains, privatizing the gains, socializing the losses.
That's it. Banking is an industry.
The rich get richer, poor get poorer. The simple.
Yeah.
He calls it the
K-shaped economy.
Exactly. Yeah.
Banking is an industry that seemingly only grows these days, and banks cannot go out of business due to the systemic risks involved in running a bank. Any failure of a bank can be viewed as a liquidity problem and will very likely get the support of the central bank. No other ostensibly private industry enjoys such an exorbitant privilege, combining the highest rates of profitability in the private sector with the protection of the public sector. This combination has made bankers' work as creative and productive as that of public sector employees, but more rewarding than most other jobs. As a result, the financial industry just keeps growing as the US economy becomes ever more financialized. Since the repeal of the Glass-Steagall Act in 1999, the separation between deposit and investment banking has been removed. And so the deposit banks, who had FDIC deposit guarantee, can now also engage in investment financing, having the FDIC guarantee protect them from investment losses. An investor who has a loss guarantee has a free option, effectively, a license to print money. Making profitable investments allows them to accrue all the gains, whereas losses can be socialized. Anybody with such a guarantee can make large amounts of money by simply borrowing and investing his money. He gets to keep the profits, but will have his losses covered. It is no wonder that this has led to an ever larger share of the capital and labor resources gravitating toward finance, as it's the closest thing that the world has to a free lunch. And that's the point I was making as well. Is like there's so many smart people that literally are in finance or, in banks, in Wall Street, in the bond market, doing, like one of my good friends from school is in London doing he's been selling bonds for years and stuff. And he's basically just shuffling money around. And he's like way smarter than me, like way more potential to do cool stuff to the world. And all of his time is tied up there. And he has loads of money. Like, he makes an insane salary. He's just bought an insane house and stuff. So it's like, well, why not? Like that is the best path for him possible. Like he would not be in this position now if he didn't go down that route. Like if he went and did something else, whereas he could actually create an insane amount of value in the world. And that's just one tiny example of and there's going to be thousands, millions of those sort of people in those kind of jobs that are not using their brain to create value. They're just moving money around. Economist Thomas Philippon has produced detailed studies of the size of the financial sector as a percentage of GDP over the past 150 years. The ratio was less than 3% during the years preceding World War I, but was to shoot up afterwards, collapsing during the Great Depression, but growing seemingly in an unstoppable manner since the end of World War II. Anecdotally, one can see this reflected in the high percentage of university students who are interested in pursuing careers in finance rather than engineering, medicine, or other more productive industries. As telecommunications has advanced, one would expect that more and more of the financial industry's work can be automated and done mechanistically, leading to the industry shrinking in size over time. But in reality, it continues to mushroom, not because of any fundamental demand, but because it is protected from losses by government and allowed to thrive. The bezel may be most pronounced in the financial industry, but it does not stop at the banking industry. It arguably constitutes a long-standing competitive advantage for firms of larger size over those of a smaller size. In a society in which capital investments are financed from savings, capital is owned by those with a lower time preference, and they allocate it based on their own estimation of the likelihoods of market success, receiving rewards for being correct and losses for being wrong. But with unsound money, savings are destroyed and capital is instead created from inflationary bank credit. and its allocation is decided by the central bank and its member banks. Instead of the allocation being decided by the most prudent members of society with the lowest time preference and the best market foresight, it is decided by government bureaucrats whose incentive is to lend as much as possible, not to make profit, as they are significantly protected from the downside. Centrally planning credit allocation is no different from any kind of central planning. It results in bureaucrats checking boxes and filling in paperwork to ensure they meet their boss's requirements while the ostensible purpose of work is lost. The insight of the banker and the diligence of examining the real value of investments is replaced with the box ticking of meeting central bank lending requirements. A major advantage is securing centralized credit is scale, as it appears quantitatively less risky to lend to large-scale lenders. The larger the firm, the more predictable the formula for its success, the larger the collateral in case it fails, and the more secure bank bureaucrats feel when making loans according to central bank lending criteria.
That's interesting. So it centralizes power and money, basically, rather than it going to the fringes. It just stays more concentrated and more central to the bigger industries.
Yeah, how does that happen?
I was reading the Antonopoulos book. Have you read The Internet of Money? You read that one? The short one.
Yeah, I was reading that last week.
Yeah, do you remember the essay where he talks about like, I can't remember the word he used exactly, but it's like dumb industries and smart industries or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you remember that one? And he basically says that let's see if I can pull it out of my aging brain, where in a centralized system, for example, like Visa or a central bank, all of the innovation happens from a central point, right? So you've got product updates and software updates from this central point, right? And all the decisions are made from this central office. From there, it kind of filters out. Like you might have a new feature on your bank app, but you've got no say over that. It just kind of comes from this central point, and it filters out. And he said that Bitcoin is quite dumb in that regard because there is no central point that just constantly innovates and then it spreads out, because it's basically, I mean, it's genius Bitcoin, but it's simple, it's unchanging, right? Therefore, and it's also open source, right? So there is no central point where people can just dictate this is now the policy. Because of that, and it's open source and anybody has access to it, all of the innovation is on the outside edge. So in terms of like innovation, there's a lot more potential for flourishing in that kind of system than this central bank Visa, MasterCard system, where all of the innovation is dictated by a central point that cannot be changed by the users. You know, we just take the app, we just take the product. We can't innovate or build on it because it's closed source. But in an open source system, the innovation is around the edges with Bitcoin. So it's a completely opposite system. So in terms of like free market innovation, that bringing value, Bitcoin is way superior, because anybody, me and you, could build our own service or our own app using Bitcoin, because we're allowed to. It's open source, decentralized. Anyway, that just reminded me of this. We've got no say over this kind of crap.
Yeah,
nobody has, and by the sounds of it here, it leads to more centralization of. Well, this is the whole Cantillon effect, isn't it? It benefits those closest to the printing press at the expense of me and you.
Yeah, and I guess that just contributes to that K-shaped economy as well.
Yeah.
So while many industries could benefit from economies of scale, centralized credit issuance accentuates the advantages of size above and beyond what would be the case in a free market. Any industry that can borrow more money than it knows what to do with is a good candidate. Seeing as such a scenario cannot possibly materialize in a world of savings finance capital. The larger the firm, the easier it is for it to secure low interest funding, giving it a large advantage over smaller independent producers in a society where, in a society where investment is financed from savings. A small mum and pop diner competes for customers and financing with a fast food giant on an equal footing. Customers and investors have a free choice in allocating their money between the two industries. Yeah, so like McDonald's is going to get like loads of subsidies, loads of tax breaks, and has just done it on scale. Whereas a little,
doesn't have to close. Doesn't have to close during lockdown.
Yeah, because it's an essential service.
Yeah.
The benefits of economies of scale are up against the benefits of the personal attention and relationship between cook and customer of the small diner, and the market test decides. But in a world where central banks allocate credit, the larger firm has an advantage in being able to secure funding at a low rate, which its smaller competitors cannot get. This helps explain why large-scale food producers proliferate so widely around the world, as their lower interest rates allow them higher margins. The triumph of bland, mass-produced junk food cannot be understood outside the great benefits that large scale affords to producers. In fact, there's a Tuttle Twin book I read with my daughter the other day. What was the word they used? But basically, it's all about like food. It's food truck fiasco. So it's like little food trucks that just have loads of regulation. They have to like get the same cooker or something like industry standard cooker, which would cost like tens of thousands of dollars, as what a other restaurant or whatever gets. And it's all because of like other, like a restaurant nearby is basically lobbying the politician, the mayor, to put these rules into place because of protectionism. That's what it was called. That's the main thing. So it's like and that's obviously part of so many parts in society as well. And so it basically put all these food truckers out of thing. And then the story was like the kids go and protest and get this in like the news reporters and stuff come and like they see what the injustice that's and then they get rid of the protectionism rules and stuff. And so they can't, the food trucks had to like move every day. They couldn't be within a certain radius of the restaurant or of certain restaurants or whatever, which makes no sense. Like in a free market, you should be able to take your food truck wherever you want. That's the benefit of the food truck. You should be able to go to the same place every day so customers know where to find you and stuff like that. I was like, yeah, that's crazy. Like this.
What was your
must be happening and everything?
Didn't you have a mate that had a company that like a smoothie company or something where?
Yeah. So he's really struggling actually at the minute with that, and it is good. Like I could see how it would work for. So it literally is just smoothies that get frozen and they delivered to you in a pouch. So you just got like a smoothie a day or whatever, and it helps with gut health and all of that sort of certain amount of fiber. But he doesn't get any subsidies, no tax breaks, nothing.
Yeah.
And he's only recently realized is like, so this is how like all these junk companies can do it for so cheap. Is because they get huge subsidies, tax breaks.
Yeah, like rapeseed oil.
Yeah, rapeseed oil at the minute is oils subsidized. Or whatever it is. And
well, this is why
like, if you look at the ingredients on the back of something, and when it says Luca, let's say, and you can't even pronounce the words and stuff.
Yeah,
tons of those ingredients will be subsidized.
Exactly.
For no reason.
This is why rapeseed oil is in everything now, is because it's subsidized. Yeah. They get paid to put it in. So if you have a product,
it makes food last longer as well.
Why is this ice cream got rapeseed oil in? It's like, well, because they get paid by the government. There's government subsidy to put it in there. You know? So
and then you'll get tax breaks on it as well.
Yeah.
So it's not only you get given money to produce it, you will then not have to spend as much money like on tax on any profits and stuff that you make because why? Like there is no logical reason as to why that happens. But yeah, it's crazy. In a world in which almost all firms are financed through central bank credit expansion, there can be no simple way of discerning which industries are growing because of the injection of Basel steroids, but there are some telltale symptoms Any industry in which people complain about their arsehole boss is likely part of the bezel, because bosses can only really afford to be arseholes in the economic fake reality of the bezel. In a productive firm offering valuable service to society, success depends on pleasing customers. Workers are rewarded for how well they do that essential task, and bosses who mistreat their workers will either lose the workers to competitors or destroy their business quickly. In an unproductive firm that does not serve society and relies on bureaucratic largesse for its survival, there is no meaningful standard by which to reward or punish workers. The bezel can appear seductive from outside thanks to the generous regular paychecks and the lack of actual work involved. But if there's one lesson economics teaches us, it is that there is no such thing as a free lunch. Money being handed out to unproductive people will attract a lot of people who want to do these jobs, driving up the cost of doing these jobs in time and dignity. Hiring, firing, promotion, and punishment all happen at the discretion of layer upon layer of bureaucrats. No work is valuable to the firm. Everyone is dispensable, and the only way anyone maintains a job is by providing valuable to the layer above him. A job in these firms
is that a typo in the book?
Yeah,
shouldn't that be value?
Yeah. So I was thinking, a job in these firms is a full-time game of office politics. Such jobs are only appealing to shallow, materialistic people who enjoy having power over others, and years of being maltreated are endured for the paycheck and the hope of being able to inflict this maltreatment on others. It is no wonder that people who work these jobs are regularly depressed and in need of constant medication and psychotherapy to maintain basic functionality. No amount of bezel money is worth the spiritual destruction that such an environment creates in people. While these organizations face no real accountability, the flip side of having no productivity is that it is quite possible for a newly elected official to come into office and completely defund them out of existence in a matter of weeks. This is a far more tragic fate for the workers in these organizations, as they generally have no useful skills whatsoever that can be transferred to other avenues of work. The only cure that can work for these pathologies is sound money, which will eradicate the notion of people working for the sake of ticking boxes and pleasing sadistic bosses, and make market discipline the only arbiter of anyone's income. If you find yourself toiling away in one of these industries where the stress of your job centers purely on pleasing your boss rather than producing something of value, and are not happy with this reality, you may be relieved or frightened to realize the world doesn't have to be this way, and your job may not survive forever, as your government's printing press might not continue working forever. Read on, because the virtues of sound money may inspire a new world of opportunity for you. We did it. We got the digital money.
There we go. That reminded me of something. I'll just click off this screen share for now. I can't remember who said it. I think it was in that book I mentioned, Gradually Then Suddenly by Parker Lewis. That is on the same. It's also put out by Seyfried's publishing house.
Oh, right.
He talks about how you can have like a controlled Keynesian economy, which is controlled by a central point. You know, all the prices are dictated by this central point. And short term, it does create like stability. But because certain markets are propped up that should have failed in a free market, under the surface, all of these cracks, and this creates like a really fragile system under the surface. It creates like a house of cards. Eventually, because you've kind of artificially, what's the word? Like, artificially controlled things in a fake manner. Eventually, that whole house of cards collapses, which is what we see with every kind of fiat currency throughout history. But when you've got something like Bitcoin, to start with, in the short term, it's fragile and there's volatility while it kind of takes its place and people get wrecked and all this kind of stuff. And, Bitcoin treasury companies get wrecked or whatever, exchanges go bust and all that kind of stuff. Long term, though, it creates much more of a stable. But even with Bitcoin, miners go offline. You've got all this bad PR. It gets attacked or whatever. It creates more resilience in the long run because it's more of an anti-fragile network. So in the long run, Bitcoin is more stable, it's more sound, but it has this short-term volatility, which eventually will work itself out because it's a free market, versus this current system we've got, which is artificially, stabilized short-term, which creates cracks long-term. And we're feeling those cracks now. I thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah, the thing that fascinates me the most is really looking into what a global free market is. I did one video on it. I think it was like how the money's broken and how Bitcoin fixes it, something like that. But like, I feel like that needs to be done a lot more. Is people like, Jeff Booth, often hear him on podcasts, and I would love to pick his brains more on what the free market actually really looks like. He says things like 8 billion people in service of 8 billion people. And I did so much research into that video. I actually think it was one of the best videos, and it's got one of the fewest views. But I think that's, for me, is the most exciting thing about Bitcoin, because, and it is those 5 rules that he says all the time. So I call it DOPEs. So is it decentralized, open, secure protocol, bounded by energy, that's secure? If it is those 5 things, if you just think on first principles, then that is a global free market, the first global free market that has ever existed. And when the majority of people are using the global free market, the abundance is like unfathomable. Like we can't, it sounds utopian. It sounds like something that can't exist in our current world. And it's never been able to exist in humanity, because we've never had a global free market ever. Like even gold was never a global free market. And I think that's the thing for me, is I just think it's amazing, because all of these things that we spoke about on here, like subsidizing, taxes, lobbying politicians, bailouts, all of these things. So if a bank does bad things like lending money badly, like in 2008, if you watch The Big Short, you see how ridiculous they were packaging up basically what they call B or C criteria mortgages, which is kind of the equivalent of someone who's very likely to default on their mortgage. They're not good loans that they've given out to people. They might have an unstable job, could be tons of reasons why. And they just put a whole bunch of them together and then call them like AAA rated, which was like the highest secured mortgages that exist, like mortgage-backed securities. That was what they were doing, which is insane. It's like saying, oh, if we get 100 people who are very unstable, who maybe take drugs and have a track record of not paying their, heroin addicts or something like that, they're unstable people. But if we get 100 of them and put them together, now we've made a AAA rated, like we've made the best one.
We've made one stable person.
And that is literally what they did. Yeah, we've made a really stable one. And so it made no logical sense what they did. But what was the punishment for the bankers? They got massive rewards and bonuses that year, and everyone else felt the pinch, lost jobs, and I've forgotten that saying already.
The gains were privatized, and the losses were socialized.
That's it. Yeah. That's exactly what happened.
Maybe
that's not possible. The bank would just fail. The bank would go bankrupt. The bankers would lose their jobs, potentially go to prison because they've done illegal things. And a little local bank who's, lends money in the right way. We spoke about this as well before. Is like on a Bitcoin standard, like if everyone had Bitcoin, the only time you would loan Bitcoin is if you were very sure that person's going to be able to pay you back.
Yeah.
You would just be more,
exactly. that it's the business that is going to be a success. Yeah,
they've got a business that is already profitable. You would assess them, and you'd only give it to people, or like close friends, loved ones, or whatever. If they're in financial difficulty, and you're always going to have their back, sort of thing. Like that's the only kind of loans that would ever exist. Whereas now, as proven with like the whole zombie companies and things like that, there's so many companies that are unprofitable that can get such cheap loans.
Yeah.
Which is just insane. And they're not making any money. They just keep losing money, but they just keep getting more and more bigger, cheaper loans every year. And it's that's not possible in a Bitcoin standard. So you'd get rid of all that competition of waste, and that frees even more space in the free market for people to provide value.
Innovation.
And then maybe we see that innovation and see that value, and then like you can see it on YouTube with Bitcoin, by the way. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but people often... Have you seen, what's his name? The Exit Manual. Have you seen that channel?
Yeah, I've just seen it pop up, yeah.
It's really good. Like he's obviously like a YouTuber. He's got a background in this, and he obviously understands Bitcoin as well.
Yeah,
they are incredible. But I've noticed actually a couple of times he's definitely taken snippets of stuff that he's seen in my videos and made them way better. And I'm not even mad. It's like, that's so cool, because it is way better what he's done. And that's the point. Like that is the free market working. Like someone sees someone do something and then they do it better for less money or something. And then that's how everything keeps getting cheaper and cheaper. And that's what you want to see. And I found it quite infuriating how few videos there are that explain things in like simple terms or whatever, and he's doing it on a whole other level. Like, and I was like, if that channel existed before I started my channel, I'd have been like, oh, cool, like this already exists, sort of thing.
Exactly.
Whereas it's just so good to see, and like that will happen in every area though. It's not just Bitcoin YouTube channels. It will be people making wine, people whatever, like carpenters, everything that someone does, people will see it and then go and do it better for cheaper. And that is the free market working, and everything will get cheaper and cheaper down to the cost of production eventually, because they'll find ways of doing it. And then with AI and things like that, it's just going to speed up that process. Whereas actually what's going to happen in the real system, or the current system, the current monetary system, is the complete opposite. The AI will devastate people in these coming years, because they'll be losing their jobs. They'll have to have universal basic income, which accelerates the issue of the current fiat system, because they'll have to print more money, and they'll have to do, and bailouts and all that sort of stuff. It's just going to be on steroids. Like if any of this stuff does start to happen, and if not, I don't think it can ever be bad to have some form of sound money, whether it's Bitcoin, gold, whatever it is. Like that's never, it's never a bad thing. Like no one invests in gold and you say, oh, that's a risky thing to do. Like it's never a bad thing.
Maybe we should get Jeff Booth's book done next after we finish this one. That'd be a good one. So it's a tough one. Like I've only read it once.
And it hardly talks about Bitcoin. Like even less than the Bitcoin standard, which is called the Bitcoin standard.
It will be a good one to do, though.
Yeah, it is a good book. It is very good. I think it's probably the most important thing for people to understand as well, is that what does he say? The natural state of the free market is deflation.
Exactly.
He says it so much.
So many times.
But it doesn't make any sense. You actually have to say it. Like, you have to hear it thousands. Like, you have to hear people explain it in different ways before it makes any sense. Because the first time you hear it, it just sounds crazy. And you have to really dig into it to understand what that actually means.
Yeah, the two systems don't make any sense together. I think he also says this.
Yeah, they're completely incompatible.
Only one can survive.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see which one.
Yeah. Well, as long as Bitcoin stays decentralized and secure, as he also says,
it will reprice the entire system.
Should we call it a day?
Yeah.
Cool then. See you next time.
See ya.
Bye.